Well, hey, everybody. Jim and Dave here back for week 3 of the Extraordinary Lifestyle Entrepreneur Challenge. Hey, we're knee deep, almost halfway through this 8-week challenge that we kicked off here just a couple weeks ago. And we're getting excited. We're seeing some great things feedback-wise. We're getting some good comments from people. Thanks for joining in. If you're watching a recording of this, hey, welcome. Hopefully you're getting a lot of value out of this 8-week challenge, and you're taking action on the principles. If you're feeling overwhelmed with too much to do, that's okay. All we have to do is just break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces and take action on the things that we can do versus focusing in on all the stuff we're not doing and all the stuff that we could do. Jim, give us a little bit of motivation and encouragement if we haven't really taken action on all the things that we wanted to take action on.
Well, that's almost always the case. You can't take action on all the things you want to take action on, but you can take action on something. And the whole point of motivation is to take some kind of action. So if you can't get yourself to run around the block, at least walk out the front door and see what the weather's like. If you can't get yourself to clean up the mess, pick up one item. If you can't get yourself started on calling that client, dial the first 2 numbers of the phone call. Just break the seal. Just get yourself leaning in that direction. Just shut off the television. Just say, okay, I'm going to dress for it whether I'm going to it or not, right? Just get ready. Because if you don't enable yourself to show up, then you'll probably never take action. So just do the little things that all add up to being ready and willing and able.
Yeah, and I know in your book, Jim, the Self-Motivation Handbook, you talk a lot about when you feel the desire to act. Don't delay
you've got
that.
A little moment of opportunity. When that urge is felt, act on it in any way that you can. You don't have to follow through all the way. Just take some positive action, because what happens is that little moment is the moment of truth, the decision point between go in the direction you want to go and possibly not go in that direction at all.
Yeah, well, we're in the 3rd week of our challenge, and so if you just start fresh and you take a few items from the things that we're going to talk about today and you implement them into your life and in your business, we're confident you're going to gain value, you're going to gain some momentum, and you're going to be more inspired to go back and do the things maybe you didn't do previously. We put this in a chronological order so you actually had a process to follow, but success is made in a messy kitchen. You don't necessarily have to do it exactly the way that we're doing it. The last 2 weeks we talked about designing your extraordinary life and business plan, because this challenge is for lifestyle entrepreneurs, people that want to have a great and extraordinary life and who want to have an extraordinary business. And so we try to give you some principles and some tools, and we put all of those resources in the private Facebook group that you'll see down at the bottom of the page. We also talked about marketing last week and talked about, from a big picture, who are your marketing targets? What are the activities or strategies that you're employing every single week or every single month or every single quarter to continue to engage your target audience and stay in front of them and retain and attract those customers? And this week we're going to be talking about an area that Jim is known as one of the worldwide experts on, and that's the concept of relationship selling. Now, if you're not in sales and you don't feel like you are selling something, that's okay. Maybe you're a consultant, but Jim will tell you quickly that everybody's in sales to some extent. It's just a matter of whether or not you have the sales title in terms of how you perceive it. So let's jump right in, Jim, and talk a little bit more about the book that you wrote, Relationship Selling, and how it's evolved over the years.
You bet. When I first wrote the book, Relationship Selling, back in the 80s, it was a concept that most people thought, well, wait, relationship selling, those words don't go together. Because relationship always meant romantic relationship, and selling was, selling. It was a hard skill. That was something that mattered because everything else was a soft skill. Well, I thought about the way I was teaching sales, and I was teaching what I called professional selling, for want of a better term. And then it occurred to me to combine those 2 words, and people started saying, well, what does that mean? What are you selling relationships? I said, no, this is treating relationships as assets. A relationship's real. It's a thing, I mean, if you think about what is a relationship, the basic definition is this. It's a direct connection between people in which value is exchanged, meaning you don't have relationships with things. You might physically have a relationship to another thing that's nearby, but that's not the relationship in the context of what we're talking about. We're talking about communication, interaction, and feeling a sense of connection, okay? So if you treat all of your connections with people as potentially either assets or liabilities and seek to make assets out of all of them, then you will be building stronger communication links with higher levels of trust, and you'll end up getting more business with less selling effort. More business with less selling effort. You see, if trust between two people is really, really high, all you've got to do to make a sale is recommend something. Because the person trusts you and they'll say, oh, okay, if they can do it, if they want to do it, right? If there's very little trust, even if you're recommending the best product or service to someone in the world at the best price it's ever been offered, they probably won't buy because they don't trust you as a source, right? Or they don't trust your company, or they don't trust your method, or they don't, whatever. But trust is highly important, and it's an essential element in relationships. So if a relationship is a direct connection between people in which value is exchanged, then we need to look at what does that mean. Now, David, go back a slide just a second. The first book I wrote in 1986, by 2002, I had many years of experience with it, and things had changed, but the underlying concept had not changed. So I rewrote the book in 2002, and then again 2009 and 2015. So the current edition of Relationship Selling takes the original book and then expands it with current research that includes the existence of the internet, of email, of social networks, etc. So it's a very different book than it was when it started, but the concept is not. So let's go to the next slide. The concept is that it's all built on trust, and every phase of the sales cycle has its own needed skill set. Like preparation takes a different set of skills than making a sales presentation and showing how you can solve someone's problem. Presentation skills are very different from confirming the sale, what's typically called closing skills, etc. So as you grow each set of skills, then your potential for sales success expands. Let's go to the next one.
So we got some graphics on here that shows the phases of the different skill sets changing colors. I don't know what the connection back was to that, Jim. Is there anything that you would say?
When I'm driving the slides during a live presentation on stage, that's what that's about.
Okay, so here's the eight different categories.
Yeah, the 8 competencies, or the 8 stages in a sales cycle. Because when I wrote it to be a perfect match between the phases of selling and the skills required to make that phase successful. So if you look at it, it's preparing to make the sales contact, targeting the right people in the right ways, connecting with them so that you connect with their head and their heart, intellect and emotions, assessing their needs and wants, solving their problem, getting their commitment to buy, assuring that they're satisfied, and then managing yourself and managing sales. So that's the 8 competencies in selling. Let's go to the next. Now, before you push the next button, David, there is in any relationship the existence of tension. When tension is very low in a relationship, then communication is high, trust is high, and everything seems to work well. But as relationship tension grows, then things change. Now, there's task tension and there's relationship tension. Task tension. I need to pay my bills before they're overdue. You pay the bills, that task tension completely goes away. So in other words, whatever the task is, once you've addressed it, there is no task tension. Relationship tension, that's where you're concerned about the other person, where there's anger, resentment, fear, distrust, apprehensiveness. There's something going on between people, and the tension goes up. Now, when tension goes up between people, trust goes down, okay? So let's look at the sales cycle. And David, this is a one-click item, okay? in the sales cycle, if you're the seller, then during the preparation phase, your tension, if we were measuring it on a, what do you call that? The
Richter scale?
No, not a Richter scale, but the heartbeat monitor. What's the word?
EKG? I don't know.
Yeah, EKG, electrocardiogram. Anyway, if you were measuring it that way, in preparation, you've got very little tension. You're doing something known. You're doing it in a non-threatening way. Nobody else around. You're just preparing. When you're targeting the people you're going to call on, that's just a thought process. Your tension's fairly low. But when you start making connection with people, that's where your tension goes up. Because now all of a sudden there's another dynamic going on and there's a possibility of failure. So your tension goes up. Then once you start the dialogue with the person, you're asking questions, you know where you're going with this. So your tension goes down during the assessing phase of the sale. And when you're presenting your ideas, that's also a script that you're comfortable with. You know what you're talking about. And so your tension remains low. Then you start approaching the moment where you're going to have to ask them to buy. And your tension goes way up because that's another point where you're at risk of failing. Excuse me. So your tension is high in the first contact and your tension is high during the asking for the order phase, right? And then if they say yes, your tension goes down during the assuring satisfaction because you just want to deliver your product or service, move on to the next one, managing sales, managing self. So you're just fine. But what happens on their side of the equation? Click that one, David. First off, in the preparation and targeting phase of selling, they don't even know you exist. So they have no tension related to you at all. When you make contact with them, their tension goes up. Now notice, your tension is highest and their tension is highest in that initial contact. That's why in selling, we need to be as close to scripted as practical. Now, I'm not saying we need a script where we always say exactly the same words and we say it exactly the same way and we come across like a robot. It needs to be natural, it needs to be honest, it needs to be true, it needs to be sincere. But it should also be very well thought through. So know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, why you're going to emphasize each part as you're going into a new contact with someone else. Then, during the dialogue where you're assessing needs and asking questions, typically their tension's not very high, neither is yours. When you start making your sales presentation, then they're getting interested, their tension's going up, and it's task tension. But if you're presenting in such a way that you're not listening to their feedback, then it becomes task and relationship tension. Then you get to the point where you're asking them to buy, and your tension and their tension are both very high. That's why when you're asking a confirming question, which is typically called closing question, I'll get to that word in a minute. When you're asking a confirming question, you need to ask it in exactly the way you intend to ask it. And you need to be sincere and not pushy, no pressure. Just be helpful in helping guide them to a good decision to buy or not to buy. If it doesn't make sense for them, then don't recommend it. And then their tension goes down while you're assuring satisfaction and making sure they get the product or service they wanted. Then you go away. Their tension goes up again. They start thinking, what have I done? Oh no, gosh, I've got to pay for this now. Wow. And the other people say, really? You spent how much? Really? Why'd you do that? And they say, gosh, I wish David was still here so he could explain it to you like he explained it to me. So see, when you see the tension level between the buyer and the seller and see where the problems are, it's very predictable. It's going to be in the initial contact, it's going to be in asking for the order, and it's going to be after you have hung up the phone or gone away and they're alone with the new purchase. So build in plans into your selling process that reassure people and help them reduce their own concerns and fears and get the thing that they deserve to buy. Were you going to make a comment a moment ago, David?
Yeah, I just was kind of curious on the side of, for new lifestyle entrepreneurs that are breaking into their business or really growing their dream or growing their opportunities. Oftentimes there's a, fear of failure, the call reluctance. They don't want to call the big customer. They don't want to call the prospective client. They're just in that.
You might get some business.
Yeah, I mean, talk a little bit more about some of that tension and how to resolve that tension as you prepare to, connect or target and connect with those key influencers or those key candidates that are going to be able to use and benefit from your products or services.
Our colleague, Joel Weldon, who's a well-known professional speaker, a member of the Speaker Hall of Fame, he's been a sales trainer for decades, and he's just a brilliant guy. And I love this statement that he makes. Preparation compensates for a lack of talent. Isn't that the truth? The better you prepare, the less it matters whether you've got a natural gift for whatever the thing is that you're going to do or not. So if we look at the sales cycle and look at all the moving parts in it, and identify what the 8 skill groupings or competencies are. And a competency is things you are competent at doing. And a competency typically is multiple skills instead of just one skill. So look at the competencies. Well, in preparation, in that competency, there's 2 sides of it. There's preparation for the sale. That's getting your material, your information, your plan together. And there's preparation of yourself. That's managing your frame of mind, managing your appearance, managing your awareness of the information that you have, getting it in the front of your mind, not back here in the files in the back of your mind. And then targeting, knowing how to target people, who to target and why, and how you're going to approach those various people in different ways. So these are all things you can learn to do better. And each one of these skill sets that you acquire, your tension related to that task comes down. And when your task tension is low because of your preparation and practice, then you don't exhibit nervousness or awkwardness. You can focus on other people, and the relationship tension also comes down. So connecting, that's 2 parts to that. Credibility and trust. Credibility, that's connecting with their head, showing that you intellectually are a credible resource on this subject. Connecting with their heart, that's their emotions. That's showing them through your behavior that you care, that you're listening to them, and that you are sincerely trying to help, not just to make a sale. Assessing is assessing needs and wants. So the first thing you want to assess is what is their situation related to what you do, and what do they want? What are their feelings about this? Because their wants and their needs might not coincide, and you need to be aware of that. So do they. Then when it comes to solving their problem, there's two aspects of that. One is educating them, giving them the right information in the right ways, giving them illustrations, saying often, what this means to you is this. And the other part is collaborating, meaning sales presentation should not be a show, should not be a pitch. It should be a dialogue. They need to feel invested in this conversation with you. So maybe you're presenting a lot of information, but you need to regularly pause and ask, or at least sense whether they have any questions or concerns. And remember to say repeatedly, what this means to you is. So you can say, my service does this in this way. What this means to you is you save time, you save money. You don't have to worry about double checking because we're going to get back to you on time, etc. Okay. Then when it's time to get the commitment, the 2 sides of that are getting them to commit to the solution. In other words, what you're saying, good idea. I think I ought to buy that. Yeah, that would work for me. That doesn't mean they're going to buy. That just means they agree with you. And then getting them to commit to take the action. So that's where you need to have a good way of asking people specifically to confirm their commitment to buy today. All right. The next, assuring satisfaction, has 2 parts. All of these, you notice, have 2 parts, kind of a yin and a yang. Assuring that they're satisfied now, and ensuring they stay satisfied and loyal later. But customer loyalty shouldn't be something we seek to get. It should be something we strive to give. If we put ourselves in charge of taking the responsibility to give loyalty, show loyalty to our customers, even when they're not currently buying from us, then we will get in return a great deal of loyalty from them. But we can't expect it from them if we're not being loyal first to them. And I don't mean just by giving them a good product. I mean by being a loyal provider to them. And then managing the two sides, managing sales, and that's numbers and time commitments and resources, and managing self, making yourself better at the skills you need, making yourself better at the knowledge you need, developing the habit patterns that will cause you to thrive and succeed as a salesperson. So that's the overview of the 8 competencies of relationship selling. Let's move to the next slide.
Jim, in summary, a lot of people are going to be watching this saying, wow, that's a lot of stuff that I need to absorb. And in Jim's book, Relationship Selling, all of this is broken down in more detail. So if you'd like more of the, stuff between the margins, if you will, that's where the book's really going to help you to get that information and apply it to your particular situation, regardless of what type of business that you're in.
That's true. And also, let me add something here. When you look at something like this and you say, wow, that's just too much, I can't do all that, which part of that do you think you could leave out? Which part's unimportant? The answer is none of it. It's all vitally important. The only thing that makes it overwhelming is seeing it all on one page. So if I said, could you prepare well for your next sales contact? Well, of course you could. Okay, then do that. Right? So you just take each one in its time and don't worry about the others until it's time for you to focus on those. But if you want to helicopter up to 30,000 feet and see the entire field of vision, here it is. And that's why this is laid out that way, to give you a path to follow to becoming better at selling, even if you don't like the idea of selling or feel that you're actually a salesperson.
So let's get interactive and talk through some of these different components and actually get our participants that are watching this live or watching the recorded version to actually assess themselves in this particular category. Would that be a good action item, Jim?
Sure. As a matter of fact, that's what the Sales IQ assessment, the online assessment that I co-authored with Jeffrey Gitomer and Tony Alessandra, that's exactly what it does. It leads people through a series of 48 questions that are each a scenario. Here's a sales situation, what would you do? And we present them with 4 answers, and all 4 are correct under some circumstances, and they choose their answer, and then we give them a detailed report at the end. But you can do it with a simple chart like we're looking at right now. So you look at this scale, each dark line from 0 to 10, 0 in the center, 10 at the outside, represents a rating of yourself as to how well you are performing currently in this category. So you look at whichever category you want to start with, I would say prepare, and look at 0 to 10. How well do you think you do in sales preparation currently? And you choose a number and put a dot somewhere on that line. And if you're doing this with a sheet of paper handy, then sketch this out, or at least choose a number for your current level of effectiveness when it comes to sales preparation, 0 to 10. Then move to targeting. How good are you currently at targeting the right people in the right ways? Number 3, how good are you currently at connecting with people in a way so that the tension is low and the trust is high? 1 to 10, choose a number. Assessing their needs. How good are you currently? Notice I keep emphasizing currently. We're not talking about your basic physical quality as a human being. We're talking about your current behavior patterns. How effective are you currently at assessing people's needs and wants in dialogue, in sales dialogue with them, so that they understand and agree that you get it, and you understand and realize that you get it, okay? Choose a number. Next one, how good are you at showing them how well you can solve their problem? I don't mean just telling, I mean convincing. Showing them how well you can solve their problem and have them say, yeah, you sure can. Okay? Choose a number, 1 to 10. How good are you, once you've done that, at confirming their commitment to buy? Getting them to actually say, yeah, let's go ahead. Here's my check. Here's my credit card number. Here's my click. I'm in. Here's a handshake, right? How good are you at that currently? Move to the next one. 1 to 10 scale, how good are you at the follow through in assuring them that not only will their needs and wants be satisfied, but you will remain loyal to them over time? Choose a number. And then finally, how effective are you currently at managing sales and managing yourself as a sales professional? Choose a number, 1 to 10. Now, what happens is the majority of people put themselves somewhere between a 5 and a 7 on the ones that they're not so sure about. And some of them, they rank themselves real high. Very rarely do they rank themselves ultra low in any of these. But what I'd like you to do is, on your own paper, sketch out this little schematic that you see here, and then put your numbers as dots on the chart and connect the dots side to side to each other around the circle. When you do that, what you're going to find is you don't have a circle anymore. What you have is some sort of a trapezoid on Darvon, I don't know, but some kind of a weird shape. And what that shows you, I've asked people to tell me, what does that show you? Well, it shows me where I'm strong and weak. No, it doesn't. It only shows you where you've been putting the emphasis lately. Only shows you where you've been placing the emphasis lately. And all you've got to do is change your focus and put your energy on those that need attention one at a time, and get those numbers out further toward a 10. And it starts rounding out, and sales start going up immediately right with it.
Hey, Jim, we have some time left. I'm wondering if we can just go through, because you've had 40 years of, speaking in front of audiences and working with people in sales or in the world of business. What are some common things that you would say would be, here's a tangible action, if you don't know what to do in the area of prepare, researching your product, service, your industry, that would be one thing that maybe you could do to better prepare, having a better targeted list of who the people are that can afford your services. What would be some real tangible things that our audience could take action on, should that might be a good fit?
Let's go to specifics, okay? Because it's a whole lot easier to answer that with specifics than it is to answer it conceptually. Give me a specific type of business or an illustration, and we're happy to take from any of the viewers.
Yeah, most of our audience right now are in the role of consultant, professional coach, or some sort of a service provider.
I would start in that field in preparation. I would say, okay, I need to identify what it is I want to be doing for pay, and determine what level of pay that needs to generate in order to justify my activity and my investment of time and resources into it. Okay, so you need clear personal goals to know what you're trying to accomplish, and to have a general sense of what it is you're bringing to the table that's worth paying for. Well, I'm a coach and people need coaching. No, that's way too general, and that's like, what do you sell? I sell fog. Really, could I see a sample? That's about as good as you could do, right? So you need clear goals on what you're trying to accomplish and how you can help people, right? So once you clarify your own goals, then it's easier to prepare. How are you going to approach the marketplace with what you've got to offer? So approaching the marketplace, that gets into the targeting area. And let's define what a market is. A market is a group of people who have enough in common with each other that you can establish a reputation among them, meaning that they would talk among themselves and further your market awareness, or the market's awareness of you. So people with enough in common that there's going to be the ability to stimulate like positive rumors about yourself. So like Jim Tunney, who's one of my colleagues that I've considered a mentor and friend for a long, long time, number 32 NFL referee, dean of professional referees. Jim Tunney was asked by the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul to be the primary author, the lead author of Chicken Soup for the football fan, the NFL fan's soul. Now, that's getting pretty specific, because when you look at NFL fans, those are people that have enough in common that they go to the same websites, they read the same publications, they follow the same teams, they've got the same lingo, they know, the terminology, they're concerned about the same thing. You can bring up a personality. Back in the day, you mention a name like Joe Montana or something like that, or currently, Colin Kaepernick or whoever it happens to be. They know the story, the backstory. They know whether there's intrigue around that. They know that person's statistics. Well, that's a market. So you can target those people. You can find out what they read, listen to, pay attention to, and care about, so that you deliver your message and it reaches them very rapidly. Whereas if you just said, I just want to write a chicken soup book with a lot of nice stories, not necessarily focused on sports, so we'll put it out there and hope it reaches the world. Well, that's pretty doggone generic, and it's going to take a long time to get any real momentum going. Whereas what Jim did is he went to the people he knew in the industry or in the field of sports, and he got the best of the best of the best to each write a chapter, and they put it together in classic Chicken Soup for the Soul style, and the book became a top seller almost immediately. So that's how you target a group. You can do the same thing with landscapers, or the same thing with people who provide automobile services, or people who collect antique automobiles. They're reachable. That's the beauty of a market. So when you're applying this to yourself, it's identifying who would buy what I do, who would care about the services I can provide. How can I reach those people? And I like to think of a market as inside a bubble. And so all those people are inside this bubble. And what you want to do is surround that bubble with messages from you. So let's say you're selling to people who sell life insurance. I don't know what you'd be selling to them, but let's assume that's your market. Then you could identify who those people are. You could identify what they read, what licenses they have, where they went for their training, what the name of their major companies are, and so forth. All right. So would it be hard for you to start appearing with a blog post here and there around that community, so that everywhere they look, they think, wow, there's David Bush again. Wow, there's Jim Cathcart again. Wow, there's Candy again. Wow, there's somebody again in a blog post or on a website, or putting a comment on somebody's Facebook page, or showing up at one of their industry events, or sponsoring the luncheon at one of their functions, donating something at one of their charity auctions for their foundation. And they think, man, I see you everywhere. What is it you do? Now you're in. What you've done now is you've penetrated that bubble, and you've got a contact inside. Serve them well, and then permeate the inside of that bubble until everybody in there has done business with you.
Wow, great stuff, Jim. And for those of you that are inside of our private Facebook group, the Extraordinary Lifestyle Entrepreneur Group in Facebook, which is a free group to join in, we actually have a little section called Finding the Buyers that's actually from Jim's relationship selling series. And as a part of this challenge, you're going to get access to that. So check out the Facebook group. If you're not already a member, you can see the link here on your screen, and you can request access to it. Next week, we're going to be talking a little bit more on relationship selling. And Jim, what will the participants learn next week?
Next week, they're going to learn what they need to be measuring day to day to make sure that sales are going to increase, even if their energy doesn't increase over what it was in the past. There are ways, by us just being more intentional and more intelligent about where we place our focus, that we can cause sales to increase without having to necessarily make more calls than we would typically make. You can increase the number of people you call on, and that'll help. Or you could increase the effectiveness of each call, and that'll help. You could increase the size of your average sale, or you could increase the number of sales you typically make. You could increase the number of spinoffs and referrals you get. In other words, there are lots of things that if you just improve one or two of them, then the cumulative effect would be very positive.
Wow. I hope everybody got their money's worth today, because I sure did. This was great training, Jim, and obviously extensive experience and a lot of proven success that you've had in your experience as a speaker and as a business owner. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. We hope that you gain value out of this. If you're a participant or watching the recording, please help us to get the message out and share the challenge, share the information, and help other people to get power behind them in living an extraordinary life and building an extraordinary business by having them check out theextraordinarylife.com. So until next week, everybody, for Jim and I, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all here at the same place next week.
Be extraordinary.